Working Cows Podcast, Episode 17.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
This episode has been brought to you in part by Kamak Ranch Supply. Check out their website at kamakranchsupply.com. This episode is also brought to you by chriswilliamsaudio.com. Head on over to chriswilliamsaudio.com for all your audio production needs. Well, in a couple of previous episodes, I had billed this as a bonus episode, but I have apparently reached the age where technology does things that I am unaware it's about to do. And that happened to me. So I lost a couple of my pre-recorded episodes that were ready to go out over the next couple of weeks. And so this is no longer a bonus episode. It is going to slide into episode 17 slot. We are sitting down with Darin and Jessica Michalski from Willow Lake, South Dakota today to talk about what they are doing on their place to turn some marginal crop ground back into grassland. As I was talking to Judge Jessup the other day about the South Dakota Grassland Coalition. He is the project coordinator. He said, we want to keep this grass green side up. We don't want to till it. We don't want to turn it over. We don't want to turn it into crop ground. We want to keep this grass green side up, and we want to use it to its maximum potential. And that's what we are seeing Darin and Jessica do as we talk to them, the February featured producers in the South Dakota Grassland Planner. The show notes page for this episode will be workingcows.net/17. If you want to check out any of the resources mentioned in this episode, workingcows.net/17. Also, the video with Darin and Jessica Michalski will be linked there at workingcows.net/17. Our Amazing Grassland video produced by the South Dakota Grassland Coalition in association with some other conservation partners. So go check that out. Jessica and Darin, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows podcast. I'm excited to get to share a little bit about your operation and your relationship with the South Dakota Grassland Coalition. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about the enterprises that exist in your operation and some of the history of it and some of those things.
Currently, it's mainly a cow-calf operation. Wean the calves in the fall, and we usually background them until late March, early April, and sell them. We farm some like corn, soybeans, oats, and kind of looking to broaden that a little bit. More cover crops and different types of hay, maybe getting away from the alfalfa. I guess that's where we're at right now. My family's been here for, I guess I'm the fourth generation, and it's always been a diverse operation. I guess before I remember, there was sheep, hogs, cattle, and cropping. My he was more into cattle than the farming, and that kind of passed on to me and got us to where we are today.
Sure. So in the South Dakota Grassland Coalition Planner, you guys are the featured producers for the month of February 2018. And there's a quote here that says that Dad cussed some of the land we farmed and said that we should sow this down to grass with the help of a lot of good landlords. We made that happen. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how that all worked out and that process?
Well, yeah, you nailed it right on the head. We farmed a lot of marginal land, and it was, inputs, and you didn't really get much out of it. Like the first 80 acres I ever bought, I was right out of high school, and the Michalskis have been farming this land for a long time. This gal from California wanted to sell it and wanted the Michalski to buy it. So my cousin was farming it at the time and said, Darin, do you want this? Whatever. Long story short, there's a lot of quiet grass, and it was pretty tough shape. So I went out there way back 94, went out there with a 12-bottom plow, and I went a half a mile. I can pretty much guarantee not one time in that half a mile did all bottoms go in the ground. They were tripping over rocks. So I tried to farm it one year, and I think I had about 30 bushel corn. So I went in with a disc, sowed it down to about the time I met Jess. And I guess I'd sown some grass down before that, but her dad was really into big blue stem native grasses. So that was kind of our first venture into native grasses. Then it was just, I liked it so much. I mean, we just kept going from there. But that was, the first big step into native grass production. And kind of when I first saw it sowing stuff back to grass, I put in some brome grass and crap like that. And I don't know, I've learned a lot since 94.
Sure. And so was Jess's dad that had these motivations to see some of that marginal ground sown back into grass? Is that right?
Well, he'd kind of been the one that, my dad just had a quarter of ground that we lived on, and we raised purebred cattle actually growing up. And he had really done his research as far as, I think, the native grasses and those types of things. And I actually had gone to SDSU for animal science and was really interested in the cattle as well. And we just kind of did more and more research after that, I think, and really decided that we had quite a bit of cool season invaders. We had a lot of brome grass already in a lot of different pastures. And we knew that we needed that warm season component. And since then, in the last 18, we've been married, well, it'll be 19 years this year. And in those 19 years, we've sown at least 5 quarters, I think it is, back to grass. And most of that has been warm season natives. Our seedings have gotten more diverse over the years. We kind of started with a monoculture of just big blue stem, but we've really expanded that in the last several years and tried to target more different types of species, added both cool season and warm season grasses to our most recent seedings. And we just learned a lot, over the course of the last 20 years.
Yeah. To make it straight, it was my dad, Rod, that instilled in me that this marginal ground needed to be sowed down to grass. And, we tried to do that in a few small spots with brome and cool season. And then when I met Jess and Dave, her dad, that's kind of where I started getting a lot smarter on, the native stuff.
Sure. So were those warm season grasses, they weren't present there before you guys started sowing them in, or not in like real in numbers that would really impact your production?
Actually, everything has been crop ground taken out. So there was nothing there.
I see. Have you had success with those warm season grasses in those places?
You betcha.
Yeah, we've had amazing success. We got a lot of ground. We got a lot of gravelly type soils, and again, it's not land that we own. We actually a half section. The soybean production that we used to get on there, I don't even know if they yielded 20 bushels on a good year, and we have a wonderful landlady on that ground that allowed us to seed it back to grass. We planted most of that back to big blue stem and side oats grama, and the stand is just amazing. I mean, you hear about a big blue stem plant root can go at least 12 foot deep, and we were lucky. We were very fortunate that we had some good years when we seeded that back, and that stand is just it's an amazing view now. It's nothing like it used to be.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Very cool. So what were some of the influences that caused you guys to see this as an opportunity to take some of this marginal crop ground and turn it back to grass?
Mm-hmm. Just pure love for grass and cattle. We weren't making anything farming it. It was time to do something different with it.
Sure. Tell me about that.
We've sown down a lot of our own land too. I mean, it's not just, landlord stuff, but a lot of the land we own, we've taken out of crop production and put into grass production.
So what is that love for grass and cattle? What does that look like for you? Because that's definitely where I'm at, as I've been kind of turned on to this way of thinking through the High Plains Ranch practicum and some other influences that I've had in my life. What does that look like as far as how it plays out in the actual stewardship of those resources of grass and cattle?
I don't really know how to answer that. I guess when I look at cropland from the, what's the word I'm looking for? The standard way. I mean, you plant it, or you take a loan out, you plant it, you spray it, or fertilize it, you spray it, you pray for rain, and you take what you get to the elevator and get what you get. On the cattle side and the grass side, there's insurances out there, but if I work my butt off, I can save calves. I can't go out there and save a crop. Like last year, that's probably the shortest grass I've ever turned in cattle into in my life in May. It was dry. And I'd kind of tinkered around with some intensive grazing the year before and really liked what it did. So we ramped that up last year, and we had some good rains in late summer that helped. But I had more grass last year than on a normal year. And you look around at the continuous grazing, and those pastures got pretty beat up. It just seems like with the grassland and the cattle, I can do more to protect what we have. I mean, Mother Nature is always the number one factor, but I can do more to protect the return.
You're less exposed to risk. It sounds to me like one of the things that I've kind of gathered. We had Dave Pratt on episode 14 of the Working Cows podcast, and he said that, a lot of times ranchers will say that profit is dependent on prices and weather, and those are two things that you can't do anything about. It kind of sounds to me like you are, on some level, taking out that risk a little bit.
Well, yeah, he's right. But if you have more to sell, and if you work your butt off and manage it well, you're helping yourself out in that risk.
And I don't think, Darin says a lot about working his butt off, but I think collaboratively we also spend a lot of time. And my position, I work for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So obviously I've got a lot of inside information into, the newest ideas or the newest things that maybe we can do on our operation. And, one of those is really an increased knowledge about the health of the soil and what diversity can do on both grasslands and cropland. And I think, and Darin and I spend a lot of time discussing those types of things and trying to, make management decisions that will make a difference in the long run as well. Darin and the kids, honestly, are doing the majority of the physical labor, and that's a big part of it, and it always will be. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of having cattle and grazing. But we also, have really tried to educate ourselves since we've been married, and just our, I think, passion about the health of our grasslands and passion and too, that carries over then to our cropland as well. And what more can we do to improve the soil health on our cropland as well, and utilize our cropland for aftermath grazing or grazing of cover crops so that we can, that in turn improves the health of your grassland. You can get the cattle off earlier in the fall and those types of things. So there's a lot of physical labor involved, but also I think you really have to understand what your beliefs are when it comes to your operation and what you want that to look like in the future. And we're doing more and more planning in that regard as well.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of good things that we've covered so far. I want to take a quick break and come back and talk to you a little bit more about landlord relationships and about some of the warm season grasses that you guys have been mixing in and some of the cover crops things that you're doing and how you're using those resources. So we'll be right back with Darin and Jessica Michalski after this quick break. This episode has been brought to you by Camac Ranch Supply. Check out their website at camacranchsupply.com. Here's the deal about Camac Ranch Supply. When you call and ask them about a product, there's no blank pause on the other end of the line because they don't understand the product that you just asked them about. If they are selling it, they understand it because they are producers, and Gary Camac himself, the owner of Camac Ranch Supply, is a producer. So if you want answers about the products you're calling to ask about from producers, call Camac Ranch Supply or check out their website at camacranchsupply.com. All right, we're back with the Michalskis, my first interview sitting down with a couple, and really appreciate their time today. So a couple of things that you mentioned earlier piqued my interest, and I'd like to talk a little bit about them and then maybe a little bit about your relationship with the Grassland Coalition. You are the featured producers for the month of February in the South Dakota Grassland Coalition Planner. So the first thing that piqued my interest that you mentioned was landlord relationships being an important part of this. It sounds like a lot of this is going on leased land, and that's a key part of your operation. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I guess for the main part, when we started seeding it down, they wanted, well, I could pay them more than what they were making on farming at the time. I mean, nowadays with the rents like they are, it's, it probably hasn't gone that way. But my landlord she's seen the ground and how it's being taken care of, and she's really happy on how we're managing the land. On the other side, we're doing on the crop side, we're doing no-till and stuff, and I just I have a really good relationship with my landlords. I tell them what other people are paying for rents, what land is going for. I mean, I'm as honest as I possibly can with them. And I don't know. You're going to get some people that the almighty dollar is what's going to make their decisions. And you have other people that see that, maybe the almighty dollar mining the land for all it's worth isn't really the way to go. So I've been really fortunate. I work with some great people.
Sure. That's a really important piece, I think, and an interesting way of looking at it, that what you're able to pay using a grazing animal, I'm assuming, is to harvest that resource is in some cases, in some situations, more than what they could make farming it. And even when it isn't, the relationship that you've built with them and what you've been able to do to improve their soil health is maybe a better return on the investment than they were going to get out of it farming it for all it was worth. Is that a good understanding of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I've strived to accomplish, I guess.
Very cool. Very interesting. Another thing that you mentioned earlier was you've seeded in these warm season grasses. They weren't present before, right? I mean, are they present in other places where you aren't in a crop situation? Do you see those warm season grasses thriving?
Yeah, I've actually been rotating since early 90s, I guess. And it was kind of out of necessity. I rented a quarter of ground within a mile of each other, but it was like 3 little 50-acre chunks. And I had 40 cows. So I'd read an article somewhere about rotational grazing, and I did that in necessity. And I mean, it worked. What we're doing now is like that same pasture from the early 90s. I know a lot of it was native, but there was nothing there I didn't know what to look for, I guess, but there was really nothing there that showed the natives. The way we've been managing it the last 5 years, I've really seen, I wouldn't say an explosion, but you can see a lot of natives coming out there, where before it was June grass, chrome grass. It was all cool season stuff. And even some of the pasture that I know had been broke up and farmed for a while, like stuff that my grandpa had, it's not near as abundant, but I'm starting to see it regenerate here in the last 4 or 5 years, which is really cool to me.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting stuff. I really appreciate that. Jess, one of the things you mentioned earlier, you were talking about soil health and how the species that you're in, or the diversity that you're introducing, has been an asset as far as increasing soil health. Can you talk a little bit more about how specific diversity of those species is contributing to soil health?
Yeah, I can. When we first started seeding cropland back to grass, and we kind of, and it was the late 90s where that was kind of the push right then, was to seed a monoculture in a particular pasture and then rotate through it. And that was really kind of the push at the time. And in the last 20 years, that philosophy has changed quite a bit. And like I said, with being in the position I'm in with the NRCS, I have some good knowledge, or probably the up and coming knowledge about what the diversity can do. And so we've gone back actually into some of those pastures that we've seeded down to big blue stem, maybe just big blue stem and side oats. And now we've actually added legumes to the mix. We've added, maybe we added some bird's foot trefoil and some crimson clover and those types of things that not only helped, improve the nutrient value of the pasture itself, but, it also we know that improves the health of the soil underneath. I mean, it helps, different types of roots, make a difference as far as when they break down in the soil and what that does to the soil health and those types of things. And so, we really know what we're doing now is even a step better than what we were doing 20 years ago.
Cool. That's exciting stuff. Really. I appreciate you guys' time today. You mentioned going away from alfalfa, Darin. What were some of the motivations there, or what has caused you to think about it? I don't think that transition has fully been realized, but what are some of the things that you're hoping to accomplish with that move?
Well, from the get-go, so much of this stuff that I've learned has come from meetings, and so many people have helped, articles and papers. But 2 years ago, I've been planting oats for hay, and I'd gone to a meeting where they showed how hayland, which I thought if you had grass and alfalfa, you were doing great for the ground. Well, it's not necessarily true. I mean, hayland isn't, the best for erosion type stuff. And we have a lot of pocket gophers in this country, and about 3 or 4 years in alfalfa, it's about impossible to get through it with a hay bind. So I kind of figured out my tons per acre, what I was getting off my hay ground and off my oat ground, and I'll give up some tonnage. But, if I can take a crop of oats off, because I'm still a believer that I want some feed at home for my cattle. If I can take my oats off and go back in there with a mix of cover crop and seed it early, I'm thinking I can let my cows do the harvesting instead of sitting out there in the tractor and a hay bind and a baler and a rake and Mother Nature. And that's what I'm leaning towards. I haven't pulled the pin on it yet, but I think it might be a good fit for us.
Yeah, it sounds like a good thing. You mentioned that, meetings and articles and different things like that, and I think that's a good segue into the South Dakota Grassland Coalition. What has your relationship been with the South Dakota Grassland Coalition throughout this transition?
Well, I don't like most of the guys, but
he's kidding.
Every one of them, I think we're all on the same page. They want to see what's best for the ground. They want to see what's best for the environment, for feeding the world. I mean, I haven't talked to anybody that's greedy with their knowledge or, with helping somebody out if you have a question. And I'm full of questions. I'd like to pin them all down and talk to them for hours. But yeah, the coalition's been great. They put on great meetings, tours. My wife probably wants to say something about it.
No, I just think that they're an excellent partner, with a lot of different conservation groups in the state of South Dakota. I mean, with NRCS, with the conservation districts, with the newly formed South Dakota Soil Health Coalition, the Grassland Coalition has really been one of the, kind of founding groups in South Dakota with, the boots on the ground mentality. And like Darin said, they do an excellent job every year of putting together extremely educational, meetings, or even the Grassland Planner itself. I mean, I've had several people who haven't really paid attention to that stuff in the past. And, just because they know us and know that we are featured in the February, in the month of February for the planner, they've said, geez, that planner is really full of a lot of information about grass and grazing, and, and taking a second look at things like that. I think, the Grassland Coalition's done a great job in all of those categories. So.
Yeah, very much. And I've really appreciated their openness to partnership, and it was super responsive. I reached out to Judge. I sent him an email, said, hey, I'd like to partner with you to sit down with these producers that are featured in the Grassland Planner in a little bit more in-depth way. And he said, sure, I think it would be best if you spoke to Jim Falstick first. And we did, and we talked about the Grassland Planner. That will be workingcows.net/16 if you want to listen to that episode and a little bit more in-depth discussion about what the Grassland Planner is and what they're doing with our Grasslands videos and different things like that. So if you want to check that out, workingcows.net/16. So it is a great resource, both the Grassland Coalition, the South Dakota Soil Health Coalition, and the Grassland Planner itself is such a great resource with some key dates and some indicator species of both grass and wildlife that you can look out for to see an indication of how you're doing in your grassland management. So I guess I just have one final question for the two of you, if you could both kind of share, what does it mean to you to be included in the Grassland Planner? Was it something that you kind of looked at other people that had been included in the past and thought, man, it'd be really a good validation of what we're doing here if we were included in that someday? What does it mean to you to be included in the 2018 Grassland Planner from the South Dakota Grassland Coalition?
It makes me feel great about what we're doing here. It's a nice validation of trying to do the right thing.
And I totally agree with that statement. And the other thing, is I know that the Grassland Coalition, that their theme really this year was about the people on the grasslands. And to me, that's even more of an honor, I think, because it's extremely personal for Darin and I. It's our three kids. They, we do everything we can to educate them about the health of our grasslands and, doing the right thing for our operation and for the land. And that's what we're here for. I mean, we're just using this land for a short amount of time, but we want to leave it better than what we got it, and have our kids hopefully continue on in, with our passion.
Yeah. And I think I've seen that quote a couple of times from Aldo Leopold in different places, and that is that the landscape of any farm is the owner's portrait of himself. And that kind of gets to the heart of what you're talking about with the deeply personal aspect of managing these resources, the land and the cattle, and that we take pride in what we're able to do to increase the soil health and the stocking rate and some of those things. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Is there any resources that you guys would like to make people aware of? The links will be at the show notes page at workingcows.net for the South Dakota Grassland Coalition and the South Dakota Soil Health Coalition. There's also other resources listed at workingcows.net/resources from those two organizations. But are there any resources that you would like to make people aware of that have been helpful to you in this journey?
Well, Darin and I have utilized several different programs from several different partners, and one of those is the Natural Resources Conservation Service and some of their programs, but also South Dakota Game Fish and Parks, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We've utilized financial resources through all of those partners, and it does make a difference. It does help, especially those of us just starting out, younger producers who may not have the financial resources to really make some of these major changes to their operation. And so I think kudos to any of those partners that can help a producer make both technical decisions and then provide financial support as well.
One other resource would be the mentoring program. And I don't know if that's soil health or the grasslands, but I would strongly suggest if anybody has any questions to find a mentor and give them a jingle. And if, a lot of people know a lot of us people that are involved with this stuff have a pretty good network. So, if somebody has a question for one of us that we can't answer, we can sure put them on the right track.
Yeah, very, very true. I know that it is listed on the South Dakota Grassland Coalition's website, sdgrass.org. Up in the top left-hand corner, I think, is the click to find the mentors that are close to you and a place to get involved. And this is at least an offshoot of a program, I think, that was started by the NRCS. And other states have these things. I know I get a lot of listeners from other states, and other states have grassland coalitions or grazing land coalitions, I think is what it's called in Nebraska. So if other people are interested, and I'm sure you can find out more information about your state's version of this, but I do count it a privilege to live in South Dakota with such an active and forward-thinking grassland coalition. So I thank you guys for your time today, and congratulations on being included in the South Dakota Grassland Planner for the February 2018 month. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This episode has been brought to you by Chris Williams Audio. Check out his website at chriswilliamsaudio.com. For the last 11 years or so, I've been talking for a living. I've gained some skills in talking. I can form a sentence, I can think on my feet, I can respond to questions, I can come up with new questions. All that time developing my speaking craft has not left me a lot of time to figure out how to make audio sound great. If you're a musician, podcaster, or filmmaker, making your product sound great is crucial. So you stick to what you know, and let Chris Williams stick to what he knows, making your product sound great. Head on over to chriswilliamsaudio.com for all your podcasting, music production, and film audio needs. As I said in the open to this episode, my release schedule has been changed a little bit. So next week, we will have an episode with Nancy Lobby of the Sustainable Ranching Initiative, a very interesting discussion with her. So please tune in next week for our discussion with Nancy Lobby of the Sustainable Ranching Initiative.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.